I think 2020 started fairly positively. We were looking to build on the great success that we'd had in 2019. We'd had 10 million international visitors, and January and February started fairly positively. We had good access into the country, a growth in transatlantic routes. So it was an exciting year. The biggest challenge was Brexit. Was there going to be a hard Brexit? That was the biggest challenge, and of course none of us had any idea of what was coming down the tracks at us.
I heard about COVID the first time on the 11th of February in London. I was in Portcullis House at a Brexit task force meeting with Tourism Ireland. We went through a whole load of analysis about customer sentiment about Brexit, particularly about the British market into Ireland. And David Boyce at Tourism Ireland mentioned at the end of the meeting a concern about an epidemic of a flu influenza in China at the time.
First person diagnosed with the coronavirus on the island passed through the airport from northern Italy before travelling to Belfast.
I remember being at an IHF conference in Galway in February, and myself, Minister Brendan Griffin at the time, Siobhan McManamy of Tourism Ireland, and Darren Clark, actually one of the Minister's advisors, we had a sort of an impromptu first COVID meeting actually across the road from the conference in a bar in Galway of all places, and we kind of said to each other, well, how serious is this going to be? But even then we had no idea of what was coming at us like a steaming train. There was great uncertainty as whether St. Patrick's Day would go ahead, whether the parade and the festival would go ahead, and obviously that's a spotlight on Ireland globally, so it's very important to the tourism industry, and it's very much the springboard for the season ahead. So we were very much of the view that the festival and the parade needed to go ahead as planned, but then of course it was cancelled, and that's, I think, when I remember being in the office with Arlene and Catherine, and we looked at each other and we went, crap, this is going to be big, this is going to be serious. This is going to be a real seismic issue that we're going to have to deal with.
This is the calm before the storm, before the surge. And when it comes, and it will come, never will so many ask so much of so few.
Very quickly, particularly the second week in March, with the restrictions imposed in the US and then the lockdown all over Europe, it literally, overnight, it hit us.
We were looking at pictures from Italy of army lorries moving large numbers of corpses to burials. And that was quite striking, and that really caused a real concern.
Today's children will tell their own children and grandchildren about the national holiday in 2020 that had no parties, no parades, but instead saw everyone staying at home to protect each other.
So we really, I suppose, are dependent on the international visitor that comes to Ireland and indeed comes to the west of Ireland and spends time here.
And I think that became a recurring theme for the year. Every time there was a lockdown, tourism and hospitality businesses were in the economic front line. We were the ones closed, we were the ones shut, we were the ones who had to introduce very strict restrictions. So the trading circumstances became very, very difficult.
And we, like many businesses in the region, had to make very difficult choices. We had to reduce working hours, implement temporary layoffs, curtail operations, and that's very difficult.
We were allowed reopen at the end of June, which was a plus because that was a few weeks ahead of schedule. So it gave us a little bit of a summer season, but it was only the domestic market. We had Irish people staycationing at home. We had no international tourists. And I think that is the big issue that we've got to remember back in 2020, that international tourism died into the country.
We're losing, over €1 million every single day. We're fast approaching losses this year of 150 million year to date. So it's devastating.
So as restrictions began to ease on June 29, 2020, we reopened the site fully to the visitors. So it was fantastic to be able to get trading again, to welcome visitors, and we were welcoming visitors from the domestic market.
During that first lockdown, the ITIC board met numerous times. We knew we were dealing with an existential crisis for the industry, and we knew ITIC had to take a leadership position on a lot of these issues. And we put together a very comprehensive and thorough revival plan for the industry, which we published at the end of June. It was actually on the very day that the tourism economy was allowed reopen.
You know, representation is, you know, saying the right thing at the right time to the right person.
And it took an age for a new government to be formed. But during that period of endless sort of negotiations between the various political parties, it gave us an opportunity, and it gave ITIC an opportunity to, if you like, leverage the situation for tourism's benefit. And the outgoing minister was Shane Ross, who ironically had lost his seat, but until the new government was formed, he remained the Minister for Tourism. And we encouraged him strongly to put together an industry-led tourism recovery task force. And to give Minister Ross his due, he appointed Ruth Andrews, who was the ITIC chair, as head of the tourism recovery task force. So now at the centre of government, we had Ruth leading a vehicle for tourism's recovery. There was an awful lot of uniformity in terms of the messaging, and you had people like Ruth Andrews obviously leading out on ITIC's behalf, but you also had Elena Fitzgerald-Kane from the Hotels Federation and Tim Fenn, you had Adrian Cummins from the Restaurants Association, you had Porrick Cribben from the Vintners, people like Con Quill from the caravan and camping sector, Brendan Kenny from the adventure sector, Nicky McGrain and Ronan Flood from the conference organisers. There was a whole raft of people who took the ITIC message and hammered it home.
The blanket 14-day self-isolation effectively writes off over 70% of the sector's revenue. In addition to this, the capacity restrictions of social distancing and the challenges to domestic demand created by health and economic concerns will also depress revenue levels.
Today, in recognition of the unprecedented challenges facing particular and really important sectors of our economy, I am announcing a reduced VAT rate for the hospitality and tourism sector from 13.5% to 9% with effect from the 1st of November of this year.
I think the whole reimposition of restrictions again in the autumn was very demoralising for employees, demoralising for the business, because having done all the work to make sure that we were ready and our customers and our consumers were comfortable to come back, obviously everything was effectively shut down again.
So as we reached the end of the year, we were sort of in a strange situation, because we should have all felt very positive about the news on the vaccine. That was the breakthrough, that was the silver bullet, and that would lead to a normalisation, if you like, of the whole economy, including the tourism economy. And of course we had avoided a hard Brexit. We finally got a deal on Brexit, which was equally important to the tourism sector. So we should have been positive on those fronts, but Christmas was literally around the corner, and there was an announcement of another level 5 lockdown, which was the third very serious lockdown. And again, government reached for the sledgehammer and closed tourism and travel and hospitality.
I think 2021 will be a difficult year. There's still so much unknown about 2021, but there is hope. There is a vaccine coming, and there is a rollout of that vaccine, and that we're very grateful for.
I think the thing though, we all realised how serious this was. We were in a global pandemic, it was unprecedented, but I think what has been a real eye-opener for us is the longevity, that we're here 12 months later and we're in phase 3 of this virus.
Yeah, it has been absolutely devastating for tourism and hospitality businesses, not just on the Wild Atlantic Way, but in the west of Ireland, but in the country as a whole. And we are still in the middle of that crisis now that we're in lockdown 3.
Lots of businesses are teetering on the edge. And I think what's crucial is that government and society know that tourism cannot be forsaken. We cannot let tourism and hospitality go under as a result of this crisis.
Preserving cash has been really the name of the game for a lot of the industry, and survival. It is all about survival, because we need to survive to get open again, to get on with the business of hospitality, and that is dependent on COVID cases, vaccines, and a testing regime that allows free movement of people.
I've been around a long time. I've seen lots of different things. I've seen lots of different crises. None of them to compare with this, by the way. But as sure as eggs are eggs, this will end. And essentially we will get back to what I would term the new normality.
If you look to Europe, they have high-speed rail, they have advanced motorway systems. As an island nation, we don't have that. We need people to get onto the island. And that's why the reopening of aviation in a safe manner is going to be really crucial, and the rollout of the vaccine and escalating the rollout of the vaccine to give confidence again to people to come into our country is really important.
I'm absolutely certain that with a fair wind and a proper vaccination system, we will come out the other side of this, and we will get back to doing what we do well in Ireland, which is looking after people and giving them a great experience. And I've no doubt that in 2 or 3 years' time, we'll look back and go, my God, wasn't that tough? But jeepers, we survived it. And I think we will survive it, and we will, because we have to.